Hello and welcome to the Becca and Lizzie Meet series, where we'll be taking a journey across the UK to learn all about food, farming, engineering and the environment.
I'm Becca.
And I'm Lizzie.
And today we're going to be learning about how drone technology is helping farmers. You'll be able to see the drones in action in just a minute on the video.
Whilst you watch the video, we want you to think of lots of questions. But first, we've got some questions for you.
Hopefully you'll have your activity sheets and check out the questions at the top there.
I think it's time that we play the video. Hello, we're Becca and Lizzie.
I'm Becca and I'm a farmer.
And I'm Lizzie and I didn't grow up on a farm.
And today we're here in Northumberland to learn all about the latest technology in farming.
That's right, we're here to see how drones are helping to make our food.
First, we need to go and find Alex from the Drone Ag team. Let's go. Hi Alex, thanks so much for inviting us here today.
It's great to have you both here.
So Alex, what exactly is a drone?
Well, this is a drone right here. It's sort of like a helicopter, but it's got more propellers on it.
And so, do you use that remote control to drive it?
You can do, yes, but there are other things that can drive it as well, like software.
Well, I think we'll be learning a little bit about the software later. But first, how do drones link to farming?
Well, in farming, you can use different types of drones to do certain jobs much faster. Do you want me to show you?
Yes, please.
We use drones to complete three main jobs on the farm. Those are scouting, spraying and mapping.
That sounds really advanced. What does that mean?
Well, do we want to start with scouting? Okay, well if we just take a look in the crop here, these are the wheat plants which we want to be harvesting at the end of the year, so we want to make them as big and healthy as possible. But these little ones are the weeds, which are going to take some of that nutrient and sunlight away from the crop, so we want to get rid of these. If we take pictures with a drone throughout the field, then we can find out where all the weeds are, and then we can decide what to do with them.
So farmers can then make decisions based on the images they get from the drones?
That's right.
But how else is the technology useful for farmers like me?
Well, usually to find out where all the weeds are and things like that, a farmer will walk around the field. But that's quite slow. If you do it with a drone, it can be up to 20 times faster.
Amazing. Well, what's next? Crop spraying?
Yeah, sure, let's go.
Alex, this is one of the biggest drones I've ever seen. This is what you use for crop spraying, right?
Absolutely, yeah. This is actually one of the smaller crop spraying drones you can get, but obviously field spraying is usually done with a big heavy tractor. It's just that we do it with drones.
So this drone is going to spray the field. How does it actually work?
Well, it's just like one of the small drones actually. It's just got 4 propellers to lift it off the ground. It's obviously a lot bigger and it has a spray tank and nozzles under each propeller. And we use that for targeted application across the field.
So do drones help the environment at all?
Yes, well that targeted application is one way in which it helps the environment. That means we're applying less chemical. Another way it helps is by not driving all over the field like a tractor would. There's no soil compaction associated with that. And the other one is it doesn't run on diesel. It's completely electric, so there's no emissions involved.
Sounds fantastic and really interesting to see how the drone and the environment are working hand in hand. You also mentioned crop mapping. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Absolutely. So this is one of the drones we use for mapping.
But what is mapping?
Well, mapping is a process by which we can fly the drone over an area, taking lots of pictures, pointing straight down, and then we can stitch all of those images together into a very high resolution map. With field mapping, we can do that same process, and we'd be looking for things like colour variation, which might indicate differences in crop health, or weed presence, things like that.
Really interesting. And it's great to see the farming community finding new ways to use technology to be more sustainable and efficient. Anyway, let's head back inside.
We've been outside and seen the drones at work and learned all about what they do. But what about the software behind them? Do they use coding?
Yes, absolutely. We have software engineers that work in the background to code new features and improve the software overall.
So you use all of this coding, but do you need to be from farming to get a job like yours?
No, absolutely not. I don't have a background in farming and none of our software engineers do either. So.
Well, it's great to know that whatever your background, you can still find a job in agriculture. But what about school subjects? Are there any you can think of that might help you with this?
That's right, the 4 STEM subjects: science, technology, engineering and maths.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. I've learned lots about drones today and also more about the jobs that are available in farming.
No problem, it's been great to have you guys.
If you have any questions about drones, you'll be able to ask Alex in just a moment. But all that's left to say is goodbye from us. Bye.
Well, it was great to see you at Drone Ag HQ.
As you can see, Alex the drone expert has joined us here to answer your questions.
Thanks for having me, guys. Hi.
And remember, when you ask your questions, they'll be coming straight through to our phones.
Whilst we wait for you to keep sending them in, we've got a quick question for you. In the video, Alex mentioned soil compaction. Can you have a go at explaining what that might mean? We'll answer in 2 minutes when we come back.
Welcome back. So Alex, what's the answer?
Right, so soil compaction is when big heavy things like tractors drive in and squash the soil down, and that's really bad because we want soil to be nice and fluffy so that water and nutrients can get in there for all the plants to get to.
Well, that's a great explanation. And you guys have been sending in some questions, so I think we should get straight on to answering them.
Well, our first question is from Bobby. So thank you so much, Bobby. And they have asked, what other jobs can a drone do?
That's a good question. So we covered the jobs that drones can do in farming in the video, but there are lots of other jobs outside of farming that drones can do as well. Drones were made originally to take pretty pictures, so art photography, and there's videography, so filmmaking, and then there's surveying with big specialized drones, surveying of things like mines and construction sites and stuff like that, but there's lots of other jobs that drones can do.
Well, our next question is from Bearsden Primary. Can farmers use the drone in the rain or the bad weather? Which is a really good question because we know it's not always good weather in the UK. Interesting
one, yeah. So it depends on the drone. Those big spraying drones like we saw in the video, they can be used in the wet weather, but it's probably not a good idea to spray in the windy weather. And there are certain enterprise level drones, so big, very expensive drones that are dust proof and very wind resistant and waterproof as well.
Fantastic. So we've got another question here from Emily, and Emily is in year 4E. So thank you so much, Emily. And they've asked, can a drone carry a person?
That's a funny question. Yeah, so it's a bit of a difficult one. There are drones which are capable of carrying people, which shouldn't carry people, it can be very dangerous, essentially. And most drones are very small, so no, in those cases. But there are companies in America and places like that which are working on flying taxis and things like that, which are drones essentially designed to carry people.
Well, we'll have to see what the future holds.
Yeah, that sounds like something off a film in the future.
James from Northcotes has asked, what is the biggest drone you can get? Now, we did see, I would say, a pretty big one in the video, but it's not the biggest, is it?
No. So that one we showed in the video is one of the smaller ones that the company that makes it produce. There's one from that company which is about 5 times larger than that one. But even that is by no means the biggest drone that you can get. There are some very big, very specialized and extremely expensive drones, also in America, which are about the same size as a tractor, which are also designed for flying over fields and spraying and things like that.
My goodness. Well, I think this question, we've got a lot coming through. This question leads quite nicely, and it's from Bearsden Primary, and they have asked, do you think it's better to use a drone or traditional farm equipment? Interesting. Very good question.
That is a very good question. I'm a little bit biased because I'm from a drone company that works in farming. So obviously I'm going to support drones, but there is always a place for traditional farm equipment as well. And traditional farm equipment and drones in farming don't necessarily cover every aspect of either. So I would say a mixture of both.
Good answer. We've got another question about what to do if a drone gets lost. Can you track it? And how might it get lost as well?
Interesting one, yeah. That's a really good question, actually. So since drones were first invented, there have been a lot of advancements and new developments in terms of safety for tracking drones and things like that. So there are ways with newer drones now that you can track drones quite easily. They record their flight logs onto your mobile device so that you can track them after the fact. And they also have tracking beacons on them in a lot of cases. And there are even nice little simple ones where you can press a button on your controller which will make the motors make a beeping sound so that they're easy to find.
Wow, interesting. Okay, so we have more and more questions coming through. The next one is from Naomi, and they have asked, what coding language do you use?
Interesting one. So I'm not a developer personally, but I know that we use multiple different coding languages for different parts of the software that we produce, and they include Python and C#.
It's interesting because we know that some of you will be learning about coding at school, and actually you could be putting that into use in a career later on. Our next question is from Faya from Northcote School. When was the first drone made? Now that is a good question because I'm sure there's been a lot of developments as well since the first one was made.
That is true, yes. I don't know the exact date, but it was somewhere in the early 2010s. The early noughties rather. It depends also what you class as a drone, because a drone at the end of the day is a multi-rotor aircraft. But a lot of helicopters are multi-rotor aircraft as well. But I think the definition of drone comes from its ability to be remotely piloted and autonomous. And the first examples of that probably date back into the 80s or 90s, I would imagine.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay, so the next one is from Tommy in year 5. Thanks, Tommy, for sending that in. And they've asked, how high can a drone fly?
Good one, Tommy. There's 2 answers to that question. One is legally, and one is actually physically capable of. Legally, in the UK, you can only fly drones up to 400 feet or about 120 meters over the ground directly below it. That being said, if you had a special permission that allowed you to fly over that, you could quite easily fly it to its physical limits. So probably not quite to space, but not far below that, I would imagine.
That's amazing, isn't it? Just sometimes those even tiny things can get that high up in the sky. So yeah, really interesting to learn that. Our next question is from Ella, and Ella has asked, do you have to have a special license to fly a drone? Now, I'm guessing it might be a bit like a car or a plane?
Yes, well, it depends on the drone, and it depends on the place it's being flown, and it depends on the use case as well, so what it's going to be doing. At the very least, anybody flying something like a small drone or even a remote control aeroplane need what's called a flyer ID from the Civil Aviation Authority. That's very easy to get, so as long as you pass a test, you can get one of those. But with bigger, heavier, more specialized and expensive drones that could, in theory, do a lot more damage if they were used improperly, you do need licenses. So something like a GVC, which is a General Visual Line of Sight certificate.
There you go. It sounds a bit complicated, but I'm sure if you want to start flying a drone, I'm sure there's lots of ways to get the right licenses and experience as well.
Well, Josh in year 4 has also asked a question, so thank you, Josh. Can lots of drones work together at the same time?
That's a really good question, and yes, absolutely.
Oh.
There are some technologies in China and America which use what's called swarm technology to do things like light shows. So it's like a fireworks show, but using drones instead, where they might make really interesting shapes in the sky and fly around each other. Yeah, that's using sometimes dozens of drones all at the same time. But there are cases in agriculture where that's also the case. The large spraying drones that I mentioned in the video, those can work up to 5 of them at the same time. So you can have 1 controller and 5 drones all spraying the field at the same time. So that's a type of swarm technology specific for agriculture as well.
Well, a good question there. We've got one from Ben at All Saints School. What do you do if the drone breaks halfway through a field? So you're mid-flight and it breaks. What happens then? Hopefully they don't break though, I'm sure.
Probably make a very sad face and shout a bit. It's very unlikely for that to happen nowadays. Drone technology has come so far since their original inception. But you know, if one was to break in the middle of a flight, if it was over a field, presumably it would just fall into the field. It has been known to happen. I've seen it happen before when testing new technologies and things like that. The answer to whether the drone survives or not depends on the time of year. So whether there's a big bouncy crop for the drone to land on or not. So depending on that, that's probably going to change your reaction somewhat.
Wow.
Okay.
So Charlie's asked a question here, and they want to know, do drones affect wildlife?
That's a really good one as well. I keep going back to new developments in drone technology. The first versions of drones were quite loud, very noisy. That big spraying drone is quite loud as well, at least by today's standards. But with new developments in drone technology, specifically propeller technology, there are what's called low noise props, which agitate the air in such a way so that it doesn't make as much noise as the propellers are spinning. So a short answer is not as much as they used to.
And I guess it's like with all of the developments we're talking about, we're always trying to find ways to improve, whether that's the impact on wildlife or the efficiency. And I think we've got another good question here from Poppy in year 5, asking about if drones are good for the environment. And I'm sure the improvements in that have been massive as well.
Absolutely. Like we mentioned in the video, most drones are fully electric. There's much less emissions involved. We actually have a special piece of technology that we're developing on the farm, which charges the drone through solar panels. And that means that there's no emissions even in regards to how we charge the batteries. So
fantastic.
So that's one way, and obviously we went over in the video how soil compaction, reduction in soil compaction is very important, which drones play a role in, and I can't remember what the other 2 were.
So Maisie in year 4 has asked, what is your favourite part of your job?
Oh, that's a very nice question. I really like being out in the field and testing new versions of our software. The software, we're a very small team, so we all work together on the software. So when we release new versions, it's something we've all worked on together, and going out into the field and testing it and seeing how it works is actually really rewarding. Yeah, so that's probably the favourite part of the job.
Oh, that's fantastic. We've got another question from Northcotes. Harriet and Maya want to know, how fast can a drone travel? Now, this is a good question because we talked about drones helping speed up jobs for farmers, didn't we, in the video?
Yes, absolutely. I suppose something I didn't mention when we were talking about other jobs that drones can do is delivery. So fast delivery of things in remote places. I know that there's companies out there that are developing and in some cases real world using drone technology that delivers essential medical supplies to remote places in jungles and things like that. So in those cases it's very important to have a very quick drone, but anything's faster than driving or hiking through those areas anyway. I suppose the answer to the question on how fast they can fly is, again, it depends on the drone, but I've seen drones that can fly over 200 miles an hour.
Wow.
Oh my goodness, so if you consider normally when we're driving cars here, the fastest we can go is 70 miles an hour, that is pretty quick.
Very quick.
And also they're flying in a straight line, so no bends like in a road.
Of course.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. So we've got another one here from Northcote, and this is from Warren, and they have asked, how long does the battery last?
Good question. Depends on the drone. So the big spraying drone, those batteries last for about 15 minutes, which doesn't seem like a lot, but you can charge the batteries constantly so that you can replace them as they run out. So the drone flies home and you take the battery out, put a new one in, turn it on, and off it goes again. But there are new camera drones like the Mavic 3 that fly for 45 minutes. And there are drones that fly even longer still.
Interesting. We have a question from Bearsden Primary. What weight can an agricultural drone carry?
I keep saying it, depends on the drone, but the T50, which is the one that's 5 times bigger than the one we saw in the video, that can carry 50 kilograms of payload. So that would be either liquid or granular payload.
Wow, so they can really carry quite a heavy weight.
So we've got some more questions coming through, and Northcote would like to know, are there some drones that fly on fuel? Good question.
There are, absolutely. Very good question. There are some really innovative ones that rely on fuel, which it seems like a step back because we've got all these electric ones, but in a lot of cases batteries are very heavy, and there are some drones which can fly on different types of fuel essentially that are way more efficient in terms of what they can, how long they can fly for, how much they can carry, and things like that fly on fuel. There's a company in Edinburgh called Flowcopter that's working on something like that.
There you go. Well, I feel like you're going to start this answer with it depends on the size of the drone. But how much does a drone cost? Yeah,
absolutely. So the definitely depends on the drone. The smallest ones that we use, this is not to say they're the cheapest, but the smallest, cheapest ones that we use are around £300. They're quite advanced for being such a small thing. They kind of look like a toy, but they're definitely capable of being a farm tool. The most expensive ones that we use range about £30,000. Which is a lot of money.
That is a lot of money.
Yes, but that big one I mentioned earlier from America, that's multiple millions of pounds. So.
Oh my goodness! I didn't
For a drone?
know. Wow. Okay. Well, here's a good question, which I think we've touched on a little bit earlier, and that's from Ruben from Northcote. So thank you so much, Ruben. Can drones go to space?
That is a good question. The way drones work is they have propellers which push the air down and push themselves up using the air. In space there's no air, so not really, unless we have drones that have rockets on them, which might be a thing.
You never know.
Who knows?
We have another good question here. What are drones made out of? Because there's a few different components as well, aren't there?
Yes, absolutely. Most drones are made out of hard ABS plastics. Things that are quite durable with the vibrations of the motors going on and things like that, and accidental crashes, you have to make them out of quite hard plastic. But there's a lot of metal components inside them, and on the cameras there's glass, stuff like that. So they're made of lots of different bits and bobs, circuit boards and wires and things like that.
Great. Well, I think we've got one more question here, Becca, and that is, how can I become a drone expert?
Interesting. Experience is the most important thing. I came into my job not knowing much about drones whatsoever. I was doing purely paperwork and boring things like that. But I've learnt a lot over the last 7 years, and now I would consider myself a drone expert. And it just comes from having experience with them and getting to use them and talk to people about them and talk to other experts about them as well.
What a great answer.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great to have you all here.
And I think we also should say a big thank you to Alex, the drone expert, for answering all your questions.
No worries at all. Thank you for asking them.
Well, don't forget, you can join us again on the 23rd of November, where we'll be learning all about Diwali.
That's right. But remember, when the webinar's finished today, we've set a little task for you at the bottom. We'd like you to create an advertisement for an agricultural drone. Don't forget to tag us on social media at NFU Education so we can see your work.
Well, all that's left to say is goodbye from us and see you again next week. Bye.
Bye.